So start with the homage to the Buddha for module 5. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, greetings. So we're going to continue with our series. This is module 5. We're going to be looking at the foundations of Buddhist culture and continuing on to explore both the basic foundations of Buddhism. We're going to be looking at the macro picture of the teachings, some medium focus, and also some detailed and micro look at the deep details of the core teachings, and some important bridges to be built in understanding that as we present this. We're here at Manila in the Philippines, continuing on with our series. So I want to also accompany this with some inspiring images so that we don't get too lost in the scholarly and the academic as well. So you'll see very inspiring images that have affected the cultures of Southeast Asia, from far apart as India, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Burma, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and all across India. So spreading far and wide, Japan, Korea, Taiwan. So many cultures that have the artists, the writers, the contemplatives, people of ordinary background have found great peace, have found great morality, have found great order, inspiration, spiritual guidance, and ultimate peace, deep peace, and so on. Not causing as much friction as many other teachings, causing great peace and harmony to come to a great many millions of people. If we're only talking about the contemporary time, let alone throughout the centuries, the 2,500 centuries that have gone before, within which we find a great catalogue of teachings, of very small everyday events and how they affected people, of life-changing events that affected people, of clear descriptions of the Buddha's teaching, his manners and ways throughout the 45 years of his teaching, the years leading up to it, his descriptions of the events of celestial phenomena, spiritual phenomena, and all the means of his teaching, his skill in guidance, and the way that the communities of the time responded, and the way that we can continue to benefit from looking at those. Today in particular, right view and wrong view we'll be looking at. It's always good to look at the teachings in the form of the verses. It's always good to look at the practice of them. For example, the way the Dhammapada contents of short verses were taught by the Buddha, encapsulated long and deep teachings that are very easy to remember, within which there's a great analysis for people who are very deeply analytical. There are also teachings that are very brief. There are teachings that are long, medium. The Buddha described his teaching as perfect in the beginning, perfect in the middle, and perfect in the end, as being all complete as well. So I want to look at right view. I also want to look at right concentration. So here's an image of my original preceptor, the Venerable Ajahn Tong, or Lumpur Tong, who has done most of his teaching based in the Chiang Mai, Thailand area, who I ordained with in 1986 originally, through till 1989, and I reordained as a Samanera 4 years ago. And although he's very elderly, he still continues to teach and inspire and instruct on a daily basis with an exhausting, non-stop teaching routine. He's a remarkable person. So I pay my respects to him. and accredit him very much for the original teachings that I learned of meditation. So the inspirational nature of the teachings empowers our insight meditation, it empowers our mindfulness meditation, it provides techniques and teachings that we can look in, where they are very detailed techniques, very detailed guidance that will allow us to follow them step by step. Although we're 2,500 years into the teaching, we can still gain great faith and great confidence. One of the things we're going to look into is the nature of defilements, those things that obstruct the happiness of the teaching. So fully realised, we can get to stages of great freedom and joy in our life, great liberation, and great relief from the pain and the distress and discomfort and the suffocating torment of egoism, selfishness, of such things as all of the reverse of the Eightfold Path, the Eightfold Path being right livelihood. So if we enter a wrong livelihood, our life can be constricted and oppressed by the results of that, so we get great pain. Or the effects of wrong speech, whereby we lose friends, we disturb people, and we get the results of that in one way or another. Of wrong actions, actions that will cause harm to ourselves, to others, in the view of the law, and in views of karma, so we'll get those results. Wrong kinds of concentration, whereby we'll get ourselves confused or simply in bad habits as well, that will lead later on to poor results instead of beneficial results. Wrong kinds of use of our energy and effort, through which we'll waste our effort and energy. And also wrong mindfulness, through which will confuse us, or not enough mindfulness. And then wrong aim, we can be practicing with the wrong aims, and also wrong views. So the Buddha depicted here teaching very young, teaching about the middle way, about not having the strings of a loop tensed up too tight or too loose. This is a very important part of his teaching, which was called the middle way between extremes, the extreme of sensory indulgence and luxury, which the Buddha knew very well from his upbringing, and the other extreme of being ultra tormenting the body, starving the body, putting the body through enormous pain, thinking that we're going to get great benefit from doing that in one way or another. Here last week we were referring to the Great Council meeting to settle about controversies that arose after the Buddha's teachings. So these Great Council meetings where they clarified about the fine points or the differences of opinion about what the teaching actually was. So some schools started to separate off, so it's good to have a look at those. Some of the miracles that the Buddha performed. And these are also very good points to gain inspiration based on faith of the Buddha, where we can't verify because we're not there. But when we consider the power of this historical figure, the enormous skill and the extraordinary supernatural abilities he had, this can cause us to get uplifted faith in the Buddha. It's just not some ordinary guy walking around teaching about psychology at all. This is someone who's mastered a unique thing, and this is something that's often missed by people who simply do a meditation course or relax or develop a bit of concentration, is the sheer uniqueness of the Buddha and his capacities. So we looked at also a bit about the tradition. It's very good to get a sense of this. We looked at some of the previous teachings about the transcription onto these reed leaves, and how that this reed leaf teaching was a way of passing on from elder generation to younger generation through more than 2,500 years, and how this has kept the teaching strong, clear, accurate, and been repeated on like that. So this nature of the forest and the natural part of the teachings, the importance of the monk lineage and the style of life that goes with it, and the recitation of the ancient texts accurately and to explore them through written media is depicted there. The Buddha descending from the celestial realm again, a very unique phenomena event that he used his enormous psychic skills, which involved the ability to communicate and teach devas and angels. So this is a very unique event, not only that he associated and communicated with angels and devas, but he was actually able to communicate his entire realization to them in their own language by, through one 3-month period, ascending into one of the lokas and remaining there during the whole day, basically sort of downloading his realization into that realm, and while all the devas then listened while he enumerated the Abhidhamma. This is something that through the 3-month rains period, particularly in Burma, is done still, where they'll recite the Abhidhamma teachings for those 3 months non-stop. And every day he would return down and relay that on to his chief disciple. So I want to start having a look at a couple of brief verses. The Buddha talked about the importance of right speech, and while we can be investigative, we can be too investigative on other people. We can investigate other people too much, out through our curtain windows and what everyone else is doing, and we can be too critical. So in this picture, in these two pictures, people are shown sorting the wheat from the chaff, like this. And in the sutta he describes how people who are critical of other people's faults are like the people if they only concentrate on the chaff and they disregard the wheat, and they only look at the waste material of other people or the faults and so on. So he counsels people in a story on this subject, and he says about this that it's easy to see the faults of others, but difficult to see one's own. A man broadcasts the faults of others like winnowing chaff in the wind, but hides his own faults as a crafty fowler covers himself. So nice. There is a story that I won't go into the whole one there, but of a typical example where someone is only able to find the faults in other people's. In this case, it's someone who criticises the Buddha when there's someone who wants to come along and make a great donation to him, and on the way lots of teachers keep pointing out the faults, fault, criticising and heckling about the Buddha. And the Buddha said this is natural that you find this, that it's easy to see the faults of others, but difficult to see one's own. And he always counselled his monks in the Sallekha Sutta, when you see another person and they are doing something that's faulty, simply to respond, not by launching in and attacking the person and pulling them to pieces or then going talking about them, but to use that action internally to say that those other people might do that fault, but I resolve not to, and to uproot it out of my own experience. And when you counsel that to a whole community of people, everyone goes away, and all the faults of all the others all turn into benefits for everybody, because everybody then starts reprogramming themselves to be better. So that's another example of the way that the Buddha taught. And then another verse following on: there is no fire like passion, there is no grip like ill will, there is no net like ignorance, there is no river like craving. So these kind of teachings, very, very beautiful, and often accompanied by a very peculiar and interesting story. In this one, it's where he's giving a Dhamma talk, much like this one here. And Ananda, who's with him, looks around. Ananda's just fanning the Buddha, and the Buddha's carrying on teaching all of his great deep teaching. But there are 5 people who are listening to the talk, supposedly listening, sitting there. And one of them was asleep while sitting, just snoring away and nodding off. The second one was just drawing lines with his fingers on the ground, digging away in the mud. And the third one was trying to shake a tree, not really paying attention at all. And the fourth was looking up at the sky. And the fifth one was the only one who was respectfully and attentively listening to the Buddha. Afterwards, Ananda, his chief disciple and helper, said to him, Venerable Sir, while you were expounding the Dhamma, like big drops of rain falling from the sky, like beautiful, drenching and quenching the earth, only one of these 5 people were listening attentively. And then he described the habit of them, how they were. And the Buddha says to him, he says, Ananda, these people could not get rid of their old habits. So these old habits from ancient past lives, they're still in there. So in their past existence, the first one was a snake. As a snake usually coils itself up and goes to sleep, so also this man goes to sleep while listening to the Dhamma. Maybe a Kundalini reference.
One was scratching the earth with his hand, trying to. All these beautiful words are going on. All he can do is dig down into the ground. He was an earthworm in a past life. The one who was shaking the tree was a monkey, and the one who was gazing up at the sky was an astronomer studying only interest in the planets. The one who was listening attentively to the Dhamma was a learned astrologer interested in the psychology of the personality and the mind and the makeup and its cause-effect relationship. In this connection, Ananda, you must remember that one must be attentive to be able to understand the Dhamma and so on. It says there is no fire-like passion, there is no grip-like ill will, there is no net-like ignorance, there is no river-like craving. So the difficulty of shedding past habits.
What's Sotapati?
Yeah, at the end of the discourse, the one who was listening attained Sotapati, fruition. Sotapati means to enter the stream. There's a stream of assurance that leads to Nibbana. So they actually attain Nibbana during that listening. They actually realise what's all being talked about, meditate correctly, everything lines up, and they attain stream entry, they attain the path to Nibbana. And after that, the realisations all start to make so much sense that there's a continual evolution towards Nibbana, fully enlightened. So it's the first step of 4 realisations. And it's said that a person who attains first Sotapati, that's stream entry, or Sotapanna, there's another way. And then Sakadagami, this is the second stage, second realisation. Third realisation, Anagami, once returner, and then also Arahat. And it's said that someone attains this first level will only have 7 more lives. So that's meaning Sotapati. So let's look at this next section, talking about wrong view, which we've been looking at. Last module, we were looking at the net of views, 62 views, whereby people are caught in. So this next section is going to be taken from the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. So it's a good authority, very learned monk, great teacher. Now we've had this look at something visual. I'd like to do a little bit of reading and go through some text. It's very much a part of the practice between also meditation and also sutta study, like that. So it's an important part of the practice. So in this case, we're talking about looking at, in the Sallekha Sutta, where he goes through 44. In the Sallekha Sutta is the 8th in the Majjhima Nikaya, and it's talking about the Buddha having gone through 44 types of defilements and how we can turn those round from the wrong way of having it to the right view, like the wrong way of harbouring ill will or the habit of jealousy, and turning that round, for example. In this case, wrong view is the 11th, because it goes through the Eightfold Path, basically, detailing what is meant by wrong view, wrong aim, wrong concentration, wrong mindfulness, and so on, of all the Eightfold Path, right through the end. So wrong view, firstly, 10 just generally wrong ideas that lead to that are important in order to clarify what is the Dharma considers a right idea. You don't have to take it on lock, stock and barrel, but it's good to hear what is meant by that. And 10 wrong views. Typically, denial of karma and its effects, which if you deny karma, you can do all kinds of things. So they've just had a shooting in a school in America. The anniversary of the tragic Columbine shooting happened yesterday. So if people knew about the effect of karma, they would never ever commit such a tragic murder, not for the sake of the people who die innocently, but are also then reborn on healthily and happily, hopefully. But the person who does that will be reborn in a hell realm for not 100 years, not 1,000 years, not 100s of thousands of years, but even not much longer periods of that, as a form of consequence. So affirmation of the belief in karma is very important for moral training, to understand about it, to not fall into the realms of loss and hell. Affirmation of right view and gaining freedom from wrong view. So I'll read, because this is on the authority of the Mahasi Sayadaw. The 10 wrong views shown here. The wrong view leading, I'll start from here. The wrong view leading to evil conduct is the view that there is no karma and no karmic effects. It will benefit you if you remember this brief statement about it. Generally speaking, wrong view has 10 aspects. 10 wrong views. The first of the 10 is the view that the act of giving is not fruitful. In other words, that the act of giving is not beneficial, that it is only a waste of one's property. However, careful reflection leaves no doubt about the benefits of giving. The recipient is pleased with what they get. Your act of giving makes them happy, physically and mentally. The food that you give to a starving person may prolong their life. I'll put this all in the neutral gender. But the donor too is happy by reflecting on the results of their act. Moreover, they endear themselves to many people. The man who contributes liberally to a fund for a certain project in the neighbourhood is greatly respected. They are praised by wise people. They win admiration and fame, and are respected at every meeting they attend. They have attendance wherever they live. They have influence and are successful in every undertaking. These are the benefits that accrue to them here and now. After their death, the donor is reborn as a prosperous person, and they attain heavenly realms. Of course, there are post-mortem rewards that do not admit of empirical investigation, scientific investigation. For those who insist on actual facts, it is hard to understand. However, we should accept the teaching on karma, bearing in mind that it is beyond the comprehension of the ignorant, and that its verification lies within the intellectual sphere of the enlightened Buddha, the Arahants, and psychic meditators. If you wish to realize its truth, you should develop supernormal powers. That will help you to fulfill your desire. Within the divine eye, you can see millions of donors enjoying heavenly bliss, as well as millions of evil-minded misers who are suffering in hell, or as hungry ghosts. Some meditators who do not have such supernormal powers see beings attaining heavenly realms because of wholesome karma, and being reborn in the lower realms because of unwholesome karma. This, of course, raises the question of whether what these meditators see is real or only imaginary. However, it is reasonable to accept it as real in view of the independent accounts of similar experiences by other meditators. The denial of any benefit accruing from giving is part of wrong view. 2. The second part of wrong view is the view that there is no use in making an offering on a grand scale, so there's not to make just small things, that it is only a waste of goods and human energy to do so. So sometimes they offer like to 5,000 monastics or some enormous things, or some countries benefit millions to other countries, and so on, whether this is beneficial or just a waste that could be used for something else. 3. The next wrong view is that feeding, giving gifts, and other trivial offerings are also useless. In other words, that feeding guests, or giving a feast, or presents on occasions such as a wedding or on New Year's Day do not produce any benefit. The second and third views are essentially the same as the first. They refer to the kinds of wholesome deeds that were customary in ancient India and mention the specific acts of giving that are repudiated by non-believers of beneficial results. Fourthly, the fourth view is that a wholesome or an unwholesome act is devoid of any major or marginal effect. In other words, it says that the so-called wholesome deeds produce no beneficial effect but are only a waste of energy, and that so-called unwholesome deeds have no harmful effect, and that the doer is free from guilt. So as we have pointed out, the beneficial fruit of a wholesome deed is abundantly clear in the present life, and its fruits in the afterlife can be seen by clairvoyant meditators. Well, the same may be said of an unwholesome deed. Those who do wrong in deed or wrong in speech will, at the very least, be blamed by the wise. If they commit crimes, they will be punished. They will be economically ruined if they do any unwholesome deed that harms their economic interest. As to their post-mortem passage to the lower realms, this is obvious to those who have the divine eye. We should accept it on the authority of the Buddha and the Arahants who have witnessed it. However, the man who is very fond of sensual pleasures thinks only of indulging in pleasure. He does not like wholesome deeds that stand in his way, nor does he wish to avoid unwholesome deeds. If one believes in the karmic effect of wholesome and unwholesome deeds, one will have to do what is right, even at the expense of one's material welfare. The non-believer may think that he cannot make any material progress as long as he has to avoid dishonesty in business. Therefore, he does not consider the karmic effect of his deeds, and he is inclined to reject it and thinks of various arguments to support his view. And this is primarily due to his excessive love of sensual pleasures. So if someone offers a hunting, fishing trip in Miami and there's a charitable event coming up, they just put it to one side. It always goes on the low priority. 5 and 6, another view is that there is no mother and no father. There's just some accident. Wise men teach us to regard our parents as our greatest benefactors, to revere them, to care for them, and to support them in return for what they have done for our welfare, even just the birth of physical body, only this in mind. The person who holds wrong views does not accept this teaching, and he rejects it, saying that people get their children by accident in the course of their sexual enjoyment, that they care for their children because of their sense of responsibility, and that there is no reason why the latter should be grateful to them. Moreover, since they make no distinction between good and evil, they do not believe that supporting their parents or any wrong done to them is productive of karmic effects. And when they say that there is no father or mother, they are denying that parents deserve the special respects of their children. It is a heinous view. One result of this view is certain, and it is that the person who holds it will not be respected by their children. So many psychotherapeutic views that encourage you to blame or hold the reason for your current distress down to parents often unconsciously allow this to go. Whereas in the Buddhist teaching, analysing childhood is very much not really a part of the teaching, whereas advocating gratitude to your parents is strongly advocated. They say even carrying your mother or father for 100 years on your shoulders and so on would not be enough to repay them for the gift of physical life at all, and that it's difficult to enter the human realm like this. So we should be grateful even when there's been adverse or disharmonious childhood, that this is part of our own karma. Very important point. 7, this is the view that there is no such thing as this world as distinct from another world. It's a Loka view. In other words, there is no rebirth in the human world following death in the other world. So this means, was there angelic realms or hell realms before we came to be born in this world? So this is what's partly about that. Just the world that you're seeing is it. One who holds this wrong view rejects hell, rejects the celestial realms, rejects hungry ghost realms, which are invisible, unless you have the supernormal powers. In this view, the only other world is the animal realm, and it is impossible for an animal to die and to pass on to the human world after death, they think. For death annihilates every living being, they say. 8th view of the 10. This view denies the existence of other realms at all. It denies the possibility of rebirth later in hell, heaven, or as a hungry ghost following death in the human world. So one was preceding and the other one's after death. It insists that annihilation is the fate of every dying person. Again, the common example, someone would machine gun many people and then shoot themselves, thinking only based on this, if they had any idea that death might consequently involve them in a hell, they wouldn't do it. They simply wouldn't do it. 9th, this view says that there is no being who emerges in a new existence after death in a previous existence. In this sense, this view is the same as views 7 and 8. And the Pali text says, Nati Sata Apapatika. This is different in this, which means that there are no beings which spontaneous birth, which is that word upapati. In other words, it refers to beings who emerge in the next life with complete body organs, or body with organs. So these beings are deities, for example, angels, for example. Before it goes on, I explain. Angels, according to rebirth, are born fully formed. They don't take birth in an angel who gets pregnant and then are birthed or something and then grow up like baby angels. They are born fully formed as adults like that, and then remain youthful for very long periods of time, for a finite amount of time. Same with hell realm beings. They are born with a fully formed body that experiences constant pain. The non-believing denies their existence because he has never seen them himself. There is no basis for this skepticism. For good spirits as well as evil spirits are to be found actually in many places. There are tree deities who give instant trouble to those who destroy their abodes. The spirits that guard ancient treasures have been seen by some people, and the psychic feats of some wizards have been witnessed by others. Then there are meditators who have really seen celestial beings, seen Brahmas. These are very higher than angels. These are forms of gods and high gods. Hungry ghosts and also hell beings by means of their power of concentration. In view of these facts, the view that denies the existence of the spiritual realms is untenable. And lastly, 10th, this view is important, so I'll give it an almost literal translation of the Pali passage and explain it. Now, the Buddha pointed out that the right view and wrong view is the most proximate cause for the causing of the path to arise. So we have to be very careful, and this is why I'm giving it this gravity. And we'll go on and discuss some lighter and more detailed things later on.
Really? Right view and wrong view, that's like the biggest...
Right view is that if you have wrong view, proximate cause can be doing evil things. For example, suicide bombing or something like this that will cause that person and other people in hell realms, misguiding people, teaching people. If you have good livelihood and right speech and everything, it can still be kept with a wrong view, and that will pull the whole thing away, but you can still be speaking very sweetly and so on.
Because I thought all the eightfold steps had equal weight. That's how I understand.
It depends. Certainly the Buddha gave massive importance to this one. Tanissaru Bhikkhu listed these two, right view and the intention. Because the intention, even in the first Dhammapada, intention and mind is the forerunner. So the first three, livelihood, speech and so on, they're physical. They follow on from the mind. So if you've got right intention, right mind, the body will follow along from that. And also concentration and everything, depending much, first of all, on intention, and intention is being guided by the wisdom of the view. So that's very important. Once you clarify view, most of the others, like your choice of all the other ones, can follow along from that. So it's a very important point. I wouldn't say categorically without being able to put a sutra on it right now, but this is what I've been taught, also Bhante Buniji taught. This view is important, so I'll give it almost literal translation of the Pali passage and explain it. There are recluses and Brahmins who say that they have a special knowledge of and actually see this present world and the other, invisible world. However, in this world, there are no recluses and Brahmins who lead lives and conduct themselves rightly. So they're basically saying that in this world there aren't any enlightened people, none. There isn't anything like that. But there is another world afterwards, like that, then there you will have perfect life, that we will be infinitely, eternally happy and so on like this. So this is something I have to be very careful that in this very life we can practice perfection, attain complete purified perfection, not wait for the afterlife. It's a very important point. To put it another way, a non-believer's view in the Buddhist teaching is that among those who have founded religions and proclaim their doctrines, there is no one who can teach on the basis of their independent, special and empirical knowledge of the visible human world and the invisible heaven and hell. There is not one whose teaching accord with their practice. All their teachings are speculations and conjectures born of ignorance. This is what they're saying. The implication is that no religion is beneficial or right. So someone who holds that view is just like that. All religions are a waste of time. All spiritual practice is a waste of time. Nothing, none of it's worth anything. This charge against religion was made not only in ancient times, today it is also made by those hostile to religion and religious practice. It means meditation and pure practice. Thus the non-believer denies the existence of the Buddha and the Arahants who know the truth about the world as a result of their spiritual effort. However, if one thinks rationally, one will have to conclude on the basis of the non-believer's own saying that the non-believer is also just an ordinary man, and that his argument is also just mere speculation without special knowledge. There's no way they can know that the Buddha was wrong, or that the Arahants didn't have anything, or that all these other things, they can't know that. That's just something that they've thought up. They don't have any special knowledge to prove or say that. One should not accept as a true the words of an ignorant person. One must think deeply and independently. There are many religions in the world. Some of them concede in their holy books their teaching are based on speculations and not on actual experience. Moreover, these religions do not promise any personal experience to those who practice their teachings in the present life. Instead, they insist on blind faith and worship. Such religions do not appeal to the wise. As for the Buddha Dharma, it claims its teaching is based on personal, extraordinary knowledge. True to its claim, steadfast practice will ensure personal experience. The Buddha's teaching is confirmed by science in many respects. However, to verify the teaching decisively, one will have to practice systematically and thoroughly. This is the quality of the Buddha's teaching. It's not a belief system. It says that ehipasiko, if you come and practice by yourself, openaiko, you'll see internally by yourself, by your own experience, not by just believing someone else has got it thoroughly. Anyone who holds this last wrong view should practice properly and see for themselves. The man who proclaimed this tenfold doctrine in the lifetime of the Buddha was Ajita, a teacher of a religious sect. However, he was already teaching before the rise of Buddhism, so initially his attack might not have applied to the Buddha and his disciples, who were true Arahants, but as he continued to make a sweeping charge against all holy men in the time of the Buddha, it implies attack on the Buddha and the true Arahants. Okay, it's enough reading. That gives you some idea of the gravity and importance, and also the scope of some of the things that are taken into account. So back to the Sallekha Sutta, there's some animations and sort of illustrations just to describe kind of things, which in contemporary terms are wrong view. Wrong view can lead us into delusion and confusion and beliefs that are just going to make us fanciful, not see things clearly as they really are, or ourselves as they really are. To take us in the wrong aim as well, just into deluded believings, a kind of sort of pie in the sky type imaginings that we can chase and dream after, which actually are nothing but confusing like this. Or these are faith-based beliefs that we're building a stairway up into nowhere. Wrong kinds of liberation as well, that don't really lead there. False promises, which don't really lead into liberation. Wrong mindfulness is a key part. Wrong mindfulness can take us into confusion or absence of it, where people start to speculate about who I was and who I will be and who I am and who I was and who I will be. Mindfulness of this kind is wrong mindfulness, trying to analyse all in a wrong kind of way. Wrong speech is very important. The wrong speech is part of the category of the morality section. Wrong speech, just flowery words based on cognitions, gossip, slander, spreading rumours like this. Strongly advocated to avoid, be very careful what we're saying of other people. Harsh, vulgar speech. So being very careful if we're in this habit, or if we know someone is, also to stay away from them as well, because their habits rub off on us. The first of the Mangala Sutta is to avoid fools, and this is included in this. Wrong actions. Very hard to undo wrong actions. One Ajahn Chah simile was, if you plucked all the feathers out of a chicken, you can't put them back in again. Like this. So undoing a mistake is very, very difficult to do like this. Right actions include concern about our morality and effect on the community, and looking closely at our views, our values, and what is justice and ethical issues. But we mustn't also get lost in this into philosophical, endless debating. It must be in harmony with the whole of the rest of the Eightfold Path. There are livelihoods that are wrong, according to the Buddha. It wouldn't be possible for such mass murder and terrorism to continue if somebody wasn't trading in manufacturing of armaments. So this is a wrong livelihood, and the profit coming from this. Selling of alcohol, through which health, the wealth is lost, memory, and much trouble, loss of reputation, and disturbance is caused. It's a right livelihood. Also, the sex industry, if we see it mighty Nepal, they're doing in Nepal, where they're intervening at the borders of trafficking, of people who've been tricked into slavery, and through the porn industry, through many different avenues whereby people are seduced in and captivated and often completely enslaved against their own will, and presented also in a degrading way like this, which is a form of hellish existence for them. So the sex industry is a wrong livelihood. Selling of alcohol, use of alcohol, through which we lose what I listed before. Wrong effort, wrong energy. Sometimes we can be bringing enormous energy, investing tons of effort in a wrong way, simply just to do things like muscle building and for vanity, like this, thinking that we're getting somewhere. But all of that is invested in a wrong way, when we should be investing in right energy and right effort through listening to wise advice and exploring the advice of the Buddha. Wrong mindfulness again. Wrong mindfulness can take us into depression, dwelling on who am I and who's the real me, and for example, or dwelling on super thoughts of happiness and where's my real happiness, my dream partner, or many things that are taking us into spirals of negativity. But this all stems from wrong mindfulness as well. Wrong concentration. Wrong on the moment one gives close attention to anything, even a blade of grass becomes a mysterious, awesome, indescribably massive, magnificent world in itself. Quote from Henry Miller. So when we do manage to get this positive side of right concentration, deep stillness, deep observation, deep care for nature. This is actually a form of wrong concentration, even though these are Shaolin monks, I think they are. There were monks doing this of another sect at the end of Jetavana Monastery. They were hanging upside down in trees like bats. And the monks would go up and they were very impressed, and they were going to the Buddha and saying, are they getting much benefit? And the Buddha said, no benefit at all. So they're not getting any benefit from doing that. Perhaps they're relieving their spines a little bit in some way. What do you want? Please make me enlightened. So people have all kinds of ideas about how to bring about enlightenment. So just a light-hearted look at some forms of wrong concentration, and we're going to be looking shortly at right concentration in detail. So all these means are not part of the path. The Buddha did a practice as these ascetic practices. This is under the Sallekha list, wrong knowledge. Wrong knowledge. What does wrong knowledge mean? So we're going to look at that, because we're going to explore not only right concentration, but right insight, and what insight means like this. So this is very important. Many conceited and deluded people think they've got the right knowledge, or they think they know the most, or they think they're right and what's this. And so we'll see. A quote from Hannah Arendt: knowledge acquired by reason will dispel ignorance and thus destroy the greatest evil, fear, whose source is superstition. Now, there are very many superstitions about Buddhism, especially where it's traversed down through China, often through the Mao Zedong era, because it was the real Buddhism was largely wiped out systematically during that time. So there's a lot of superstition that is around about Buddhism also. So we need to be clear about what is the real teachings. Wrong knowledge is confusing. It causes desperation. People don't know what to believe. They look to philosophers in music, in the pop newspapers and comedians to try to find the truth. So we don't know. So wrong knowledge, very confusing. Again, superstition. One of the things that in the Mangala Sutta the Buddha pointed out. Or terror of a great superpower to punish, and thinking that typhoons are caused by them, or whatever is wrong knowledge like those. And some truisms. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they're free. So often this is the case also, that wrong liberation is held by people who actually believe they're already free and they're not actually aware that that isn't true. So on to right concentration, samadhi. So this group we're going to look at is the Samatha section and the Samadhi section. There are primarily two types of meditation. One is the calming type of meditation that temporarily puts away temptations and restless factors of the mind. The other is insight, through which we can root up ego, ignorance, greed and hatred. So first of all, we're going to look at these. All of the aforementioned meditation subjects can suppress the 5 hindrances. We'll come back to this. It's talking about the 40 subjects, which we're going to go on to. But first of all, it says in the Pali commentaries, this is from the Visuddhimagga, that there are temperaments of people. There are greedy type people, you know who you are. Hating type people. There are delusionary type people. There are very faithful people, very intelligent critical thinking people. There are speculative people. And there are some people who are a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it changes from time to time. So there are suitable meditations for those. The greedy people, foulness meditations, or the body contemplation. Foulness of seeing corpses, either photos or in the real thing, or reflection on them. Then body contemplation of the 32 parts of the body by looking at, in order to get dispassion from the body. Hating the 4 Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, joy at other people's success and equanimity, or the 4 colour kasinas, red, yellow, blue and white. Delusionary people tend to be like wondering mystical, very complicated ideas and thinking this and that. Mindfulness of the breath, even just a long time, calm down, simplify, just by its simplicity, because their ideas are so complicated. Think about the Big Bang Theory, the beginning of the universe, eternity, time, the soul and everything, like just a nice simple object. Mindfulness of breath, or the abdomen. Faithful type, the first 6 recollections of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, of their own morality, their own generosity, and the existence of devas, and the way to get reborn in a deva realm. The intelligent type, who are intellecting a lot, analytical thinking, reading a lot, recollection of death, very important, or the recollection of peacefulness, very important, the momentariness of life, the perception of the disgust of food, or the analysis of the 4 elements, the hardness and earth element of the body, the temperature nature of the body, the air element of the body, either in breathing and suspension, and also movement, and also the water nature of the body, and this all the liquids in the body, and also just the spongy nature of the flesh. Speculative type, mindfulness of breath again. And the 6 non-colour kasinas, these are good for the 4 formless states, suitable for all temperaments. With all of this, we're going to look in detail what they mean. These may be new meditations to beginners, so we're going to look at them. It's good to get familiar with what you've already heard. The 40 meditation subjects we're going to run through now, so you get familiar with the list, and to know this grid of 10, 10, 10, 10 is very good. 4 lists of 10. Excuse me, a little bit of a dry mouth. Of the 40 objects meditated upon as kammatthana, means meditation, the first 10 are things that one can behold directly, kasina, or a whole with a W, W-H-O-L. So the practice that I teach uses it as a sphere. Often the word kasina and ayatana are both mutually used. From my reading into the Pali, I'm quite sure now that this means a sphere, although we can start off with a disc to begin with, such as like a plant pot disc, and look at it as the beginning point. And then once we can visualize that, holding it with our mind by concentration, then we can start to expand it into a 3D. Or you can just start with a 3D, as if you're visualizing a ball. But we'll look into this later on in detail. The first is an earth kasina, so as if it's made of clay, solid clay. Secondly, water, as if made of solid water, like the water in here, a sphere of water, and these are visualized. It takes quite a long time to stabilize and be able to do this. It's not natural, it's not easy with our busy monkey minds. So because of that, we practice over and over and over and over again, even using counting to keep track of how long we've been trying. So leave fire, a ball of fire, trying to imagine a ball of fire. Fourthly, wind is the most difficult one for everybody. Just as this fan here is blowing air, you can't actually see it, but I can feel it with my hand. So actually visualize an area like that and try to consider it. Not an easy one to do. I sometimes leave that one out personally and leave it for the air of the nose, breathing in and out. In this sequence, this is the classical sequence given in the suttas. It's not the same order as I use. I use the same as the yoga schools use, which is more like a spectrum, a rainbow spectrum. So this is the way it's classically listed in the suttas. Don't ask me why. Firstly, the fifth one, blue or green. The suttas actually say blue as the same as the colour of a peacock neck. 6, yellow. So imagining just yellow as if it's a see-through yellow. 7thly, red. So transforming that same sphere into a red colour and suspending it in the air in the middle of it, just like something like a laser effect that's managed to be made there. 8th, white. Next one, enclosed space. And this happens, and until now we've had what you might call concentric concentration. You are centering into a centre, and all of your concentration has been into a centre, which has a point. This sphere has a centre. Now, I've been looking for a word to describe this. I was hoping to find a word like eccentric, but that just means something like an old English weirdo. So, if you take away the sphere and you just concentrate outwardly into every direction, instead of concentrating into a centre, you concentrate from the point outwards to every direction, starting with the 4 cardinal points and then filling in the gaps between them, and then up and down. This is this next meaning of enclosed space. Enclosed, if you start by doing it with the room and the space that you know is around you and you see around you, is enclosed space. Once you consider the infinity of the directions in every different direction, like when you have a motorway that goes right away, or a freeway that goes out to the horizon in every different direction, or an architect's perspective drawing that goes out infinity to every different direction, up and down as well. That's unenclosed space. So we have those 2 versions. 10thly, bright light. Actually, they've got this around slightly the wrong way. Sorry, I just noticed this. This is clipped. It should be after white, bright light, and then bright light you remove the white light and then you do the space around. And there's also another one in the list which we're going to look at, which is called vijnana, which is awareness or consciousness, which is where you use, similar to vipassana, noting, and then you just simply take the sense doors contact as your object. Or you can consider the sphere of consciousness around. It's quite difficult to just imagine if you've never done this kind of meditation. Move on. The next 10 objects are objects of repulsion. Normally we love to look at beautiful people on the movies. We love to look at James Bond and Angelina Jolie and all that other people for their beauty and their fascination. Well, this is in order to have some kind of development of unattractive. Asubha means unattractive. Subha means beautiful. Asubha, unattractive. Like this. Why? Because sometimes you may get people who are lusty types, or greedy types, passionate types, go off on a fantasy and they can't stop thinking about someone. You know, at night when they're having fantasies and they can't stop thinking, I don't even want to. This is to have the ability to be able to. So if you replace those objects of fantasy with something that's nasty to think about, is repulsive, is unattractive, then the passion stops, because the flow of mind states follows the objects that we're thinking about. So if we look at one beautiful person after another beautiful person after another beautiful person, then passion arises based on the object. And if you change the object to unattractive person, unattractive person, the passion goes down like this. So classically these were, people were sent, monks and nuns were sent to a place in India where there's often open areas where there are actually corpses out for funeral under the open air, left where the crows and the dogs and so jackals and that so on can actually peck at them. So there were all these 10 kind of corpses, right up from a swollen corpse like it's washed up on a beach after a tsunami, right there down to a skeleton with all the different types in between, like this. So you have to have a strong stomach to be able to do that kind of meditation, and it develops the ability to switch off passion. First 3 recollections of the Buddhas, I've already covered those, and then recollections of the body, 32 parts, mindfulness of death, but death is imminent, it can always come, unbidden, the breath, and also reflecting about Nibbana. The 4 Brahma Viharas, loving kindness to all beings without exception, compassion, karuna, and sympathetic joy over another's success, the opposite of jealousy, even-mindedness, stable concentration, so that it's not rocked by anything. And then 4 formless states, and these are the ones I said: infinite space, and then the consciousness that knows infinite space. Infinite nothingness is when the consciousness becomes so subtle that it doesn't pick up any of the objects in your immediate surround, no matter how stimulating, colourful they are. The mind is too fine, and it's been taking these infinite range of perspective that everything will arise into. We always have infinite perspective there. Objects are always coming into it, but in this case the mind is too fine for them to stick to, so they just, and it's a sense of nothing matters, nothingness. Nothing really matters because everything is going to come and pass away and pass away. And then neither perception or non-perception, similarly very, very subtle state of consciousness. The last 4 are the contemplation of the elements, which we've gone through. So let's look now at the kasinas. So the right concentration, if we're going to do a kasina meditation, having a visual image that we know we're working towards really helps, rather than trying to imagine, what were we talking about again? So yes, so if you hold an object like this one in your mind's eye, following along from it will follow a steady stream of calm mind states. Because normally from the time we're waking up, we're thinking of him, her, that place, that time, this object, that object, this object, that object, and hundreds and hundreds of different objects, and each one of them carries a restless action after it of liking, disliking, be coffee, toast, toothpaste, wash, this clothes, that clothes, and every time the mind is agitating along behind it. And generally speaking, most of those objects are kind of out of our control. They just happen by habit. Some person turns up, you remember a thought from yesterday, you remember a bit of a film, and that's the way our mind goes on. Now by sheer willpower, sheer determination, you manufacture the object by willpower, and by holding it by willpower and repeatedly taking on, the mind becomes calm, partly because you've decided what object is going to be in your mind, instead of having just a flood of non-stop strangers flooding in and out the mind who weren't invited, like that, through the eyes, through the ears, through the mind as well. So you limit down to only concentrate on the object of the mind, not to go out through the eyes and the ears and the door, although you're aware of what's going on, but you stay with that object, and that can be done with the eyes closed or open, or walking or sitting, like this. So this is an earth kasina, it's the first one. Deliberate conscious control of that. Many people also teach that through just concentration perhaps on breathing, eventually a kasina will show up. And this is passively acquiring it. This is different to what I'm talking about here. This is using kasina as a primary object, very deliberately manufacturing it and making it under conscious control. And the conscious control of the willpower is partly the function of kasina, to be able to systematically practice earth kasina now. Change it to water kasina, and your mind will make a water kasina. Practice then and change it by decision to make it a fire kasina. And this is practicing control, is one of the iddhipada. It's about strong willpower, strong effort, strong creativity, and strong energy. The second